Hey there, welcome to the student edition of Polaroid Notes. My name is Elizabeth King, and I'm a professional and digital learning coordinator for Humble ISD. And this is Polaroid Notes, which is my version of note-taking. And I'm just going to kind of divide this video presentation up into 3 parts, just to make it easier to understand and to direct your attention to the parts that you need the most help with. So in part 1, which is the video that we're recording right now, I'm going to explain what Polaroid Notes is and also give the reasons behind why I take my notes this way so that you can get a better understanding of the background of how it all came about and the benefits of doing it. So the definition, just to get right in, the definition of Polaroid Notes is a digital version of note-taking that is more interactive and engaging, using a variety of images, possibly some video, links to resources, and focusing on the big ideas of a topic versus writing every single thing down about a topic. And it also, because it's in digital format, is easy to share out. You can share it digitally, where the links are all clickable and the resources are accessible, or you can print it out and make it like a handout or a poster to share with other people. So the big purpose is to make it engaging for people to want to learn more about a topic, but also to be able to share it with people so that the learning can continue. So the next piece of this is what I think are the most important reasons why Polaroid notes are beneficial. And the first reason is it helps you improve your focus, because when you're trying to learn new content, whether you're listening to a person speak about the content or you're reading the content for yourself, sometimes you're tempted to either write every single thing down that the person says, or your mind starts to drift away, because sometimes people do mention things and talk about things that aren't as relevant, aren't as important. And so it kind of helps you disconnect from what you're learning for a second. So Polaroid Notes helps you really kind of focus in on the most important things. It helps you to be purposeful about what you're putting on your page, on your notes page. It is engaging to your audience. So when you create these notes, whoever your audience is for the notes, they're going to be more engaged with it because you've made it more interactive and you've made it colorful, and it just looks more inviting. It'll help you remember the content better because you're having to synthesize. Synthesizing, by that I mean you're thinking about your thinking. You're thinking about the topic more in depth as you're learning about it, and you're processing that information to be able to summarize it in a more concise way without having to dump everything you're learning onto the page. You can also share and collaborate with Polaroid Notes because they're digital. If you wanted to do a group project with some classmates, then you could share one, and we use Google Slides to do this, and Google Slides is great because you can share it with someone else and you can work simultaneously with them in that one Google Slides presentation to create your notes together. You can also print and share it, and it looks really nice printed as a handout or as a poster. So over here to the right of the slide in front of you, this is just an image of a Polaroid Notes page about Polaroid Notes. This actual resource can be found on the website polaroidnotes.com, along with this slides presentation and a plethora of other resources that'll help you in your journey as you learn more about this strategy. So when I first started taking Polaroid notes, it became a necessity for me to find a new way of doing it, because this is my old way of doing it, like what you see on the screen there. It looks a whole lot like the standard note that most people, the note-taking strategy most people use, which is just a lot of text with some bullet points, and it looks very boring. It's just a lot of words. And the reason why I take notes now as an adult and as an educator is I'll go to conferences, and sometimes these conferences are like 3 days, 4 days long. And there are many, many workshops happening in these conferences every single day. So I might go to 4, 5, 6 workshops a day. And in every single workshop, I'm taking notes in all of those sessions so that I can learn all I can learn to take back and share with my team and also my school district. So what would happen was I would have like 5 of these documents, and these could be 2, 3 pages long each, but 5 different documents per day. And then I would go back and get to work and trying to make sense of those documents so that I could share the important information with people just took up way too much of my time. So I thought I've got to come up with a better system. So that brought me to experimenting and exploring with the idea of sketchnoting, because I had seen some people do this and I thought, oh, that's really engaging and looks really nice, and maybe I can try that. So I did, but the problem I found was, even though I can draw something if I'm looking at it, I was not able to draw quickly enough while I was taking the notes, and also to organize it on the page to where it made sense so that I could actually share it with other people and they would really understand and be able to follow it as well. So sketchnoting, while it might work for some other people for their own individual note taking, for the purpose of making it interactive with links and clickable resources and also making it shareable, it just wasn't the best choice for me. So I had to do something different. And what I ended up landing on was, I knew that in Google Slides, I could change the layout, the format of my slides to look like a sheet of paper. I knew that I could do that. And I had been doing it for a while to create some posters. And the way that I would create Google Slides like a sheet of paper is I would get a file, page setup, and then change the page setup to 8.5 by 11, which is the standard size of a sheet of paper. And then I could make posters that I could just put images on and some text. And so I thought, wow, if I can do posters that way, why not take my notes that way? And so that's what I did. And I tried it for the first time at a conference in February of 2019. It's called TCA, the Technology Conference for the state of Texas. And this right here on the screen right now is the first time I ever took Polaroid notes in a session. The session title, as you can tell from the very top of the page, was Bookstagrams. And as you can see, there's just not a whole lot of information on there. But I can tell just from looking at this page that it has something to do with Instagram, because Bookstagram sounds kind of like Instagram. And then I see the Instagram logo on there. And then I can also glean some information about what Bookstagram's all about from the big ideas on the page, the 2 options, the book talks, and then there's some other resources scattered on there like Canva, WordDream. Those are just different tools that you can use to create Bookstagrams with. So I got an overall idea of what Bookstagrams was, and I put it in sort of a more appealing format on that page. So as I started to go to different workshops at this conference, I started to get a little better at taking these notes. I got a little more creative. I also added a little more content and substance to them so that if someone else saw them, they could get more out of it. And another thing that I did was I kind of kept the same structure, the same organizational structure throughout. I would put the title up at the top, and I would put like a background color with a shape to make that title stand out. Then I would use that same color scheme at the bottom, and you'll see that what I put at the bottom changes in a little bit with some of the other examples, but I always have something going on at the bottom that resembles the top. I usually define whatever the topic is in this top left shape, this box or rectangle. That's usually where the definition goes for whatever the topic is that I'm taking notes on. I always have a place for the purpose. The purpose connects back to the topic. It's the why. Why is this topic important? Why should anyone learn about it? And then I usually give some points about why it's important. Then the middle to lower half of the page is where I focus on the how, like giving some practical examples of this topic in action, or talking about different tips and tools or little tricks and hacks and things like that. I can also insert pictures, images to illustrate these things. I change up the different fonts and the different colors on the page just to make certain things stand out and to make them more appealing. One other thing that I started doing as I went along was I started adding links. If you notice on this one on the right, the page on the right, there's a link right underneath the word options down here in the bottom right. That is a link to the presenter's presentation. So when she was presenting this topic, she gave us a link to her actual slides presentation. So I put that link onto the slideshow or onto this Polaroid notes page, because that way I'm not putting everything she's told me onto my Polaroid notes. I'm putting the big ideas, the most important things that I have summarized, and then I've put the link to her presentation. So if someone was reading my notes, they could actually go to that link, they could click on it and go to that link and find out more information if they wanted to. So that's basically sort of the setup of how I do it. And you'll see as I click through, these are different ones from another conference the same conference a different year. And the setup, the organization of it stays kind of the same. I will say something about the colors, because each Polaroid notes page has a different color palette. And the way that I choose the color palette or the theme of these Polaroid notes is kind of based on the topic. So for example, on the Tech Like a Pirate, the presenter, Matt Miller, he has a blog called Ditch That Textbook, and he has a podcast and does some really awesome things for educators. His blog theme is this yellow and this black, the gold and black. So when he's presenting, I know this about him. I know that his blog is this gold and black color. So I incorporated that same color scheme into my Polaroid notes page when I was taking notes on his presentation. And then over to the right, the same rule applies here. The lady that was presenting on this particular topic of digital differentiation, I know that her color scheme or her colors that she used on her blog were these kind of this turquoisey color and gold when she was talking about choice boards for students. So I just try to pull in that to make a connection. Now, to give you an example as a student of how you would pull a color scheme in, if you were doing maybe a research paper about a book or an author, you might take the book jacket of the book the author wrote and look at the colors in that book and then use those colors for your theme for your Polaroid notes page. And here are a couple of more examples of Polaroid notes that I've taken. I do want to show you this one right here where it says "Be a Mr. Jensen." This one's important to note. These are pictures. These are just images that I saved of these notes. But if you were seeing the actual digital version of these notes, the "Be a Mr. Jensen" is a video that's embedded on that page. So if you got the digital version of it, you would just be able to click right here on "Be a Mr. Jensen," and right within that notes page, you would actually see that video open up. Okay, so I'm going to show you actually some student examples now, and you're going to see some videos embedded in a couple of these student examples. So I have a colleague, a teacher that works at one of the science middle schools in the science department in our school district, and he really liked the idea of Polaroid notes. So he gave it as an option for his students to take notes on Newton's laws. And this page right here shows you an example done by one student. He had one slides presentation opened up, and then he had a slide that he built Polaroid notes for Newton's first law. His second slide was a Polaroid notes page for Newton's second law, and the third slide was Newton's third law. And he just kind of set it all up, kind of that same format that I have with mine. These again are just images, so everything on the page is static and nothing is clickable. The second page is an example of another student's Polaroid notes on Newton's laws as well. One slide's presentation, and then he had 3 slides, and each slide represented one of Newton's laws. So underneath this, you see where it says student examples. I've actually linked the actual digital version of these slides here, and I want you to see how the digital version looks so much different than the actual images. Okay, notice right here in this first one, these pictures that looked static before are animated. They're like GIFs, right? And both of these images are purposeful on the page because they are illustrating Newton's first law. So anything that you put on the page, I think this is important to point out, should be purposeful and should connect back to the topic. And if I were going to try to explain this as a student, I would connect how that dog trying to pull that sled related to Newton's first law. And then the same with the image of the little boy running to the left. Everything on the page should connect back to the topic. Very, very purposeful. On the second slide, the student did not use video or any kind of animations, but he used some pictures that were very purposeful, and he used some arrows to kind of direct the eye to the most important things related to the topic of Newton's second law. And the same with this third slide for the students, Newton's third law. On this kid's Polaroid notes, he actually has some animations, but he also included video in his. So he's embedded a video straight from YouTube into his Google Slides presentation. And if I click right here, that video is going to play right inside of this slides presentation. And I can just watch it right there. I wouldn't even have to open it up in YouTube. Notice too how he sets this up. He's got the definition of Newton's first law right here. He breaks it down to a little more specifics here. And then he points out that this video gives in-depth explanation and examples of Newton's first law. He gives some other examples here, and then he offers his resources down here in the bottom. And you should always, always cite your resources, cite your sources somewhere on the page. So have a place for that. And then if we look at his next slide, this is Newton's second law, he uses the same exact format again, and then just replaces the information relevant to Newton's second law. And again for Newton's third law. So I think those are really great examples to kind of give you an idea of what Polaroid notes are and what they look like. So in our next segment, we are going to actually explain how you can create Polaroid notes for yourself and the steps that it takes to do that. Okay, stay tuned.